So as you think about this, I'm curious because you obviously studied the academic implications as part of your graduate work and some of the education reform. I'm sure you saw no shortage of brokenness in the system. Then you start digging into the whole digital side of things. In many ways, your experience was kind of similar to some of the ones you just described to the students, where what you'd been researching was, well, here's actually how the world's working now. And then it was like, well, but that's not my experience at all. What are some of the big impacts that you've seen as you look at, and I've got my own point of view on some of the things as I've looked at this, but I'm actually curious as you look at the data and the conversations you've had, how have you seen kind of the digital era affect racism and just even the way people deal with it?
Yeah, I think so. Beyond this, so first of all, I'll say beyond this website, that there are lots of ways that racism unmasks, or excuse me, that technology can unmask racism. And I say unmask, I talk about in the book, I talk about masked racism as being the racism that is hidden or embedded in everyday friendly interactions, policies or laws that are on a surface level race neutral. They're not explicitly racist, but they have a racist effect in that they further racial inequality, and how racism is often masked in those ways that people who don't know how to look past the mask don't see it. Lots of people don't see that our criminal justice policies are racist because they don't understand how, Black folks are, stopped by the police more. And when they're stopped, they're more likely to get charged for the same, behaviors. And once they're in front of a judge, they get longer sentences for the same crimes. And you look at all these things and we can say definitively by the evidence that the criminal justice system is racist, but it's racism under a mask and everyone doesn't see it. And I think that the internet can unmask racism and reveal to people the ways that racism works, right? Think about this video of the Black guy who was bird watching, and a white woman is now screaming into a phone, he's trying to hurt me, and calling the police. If there wasn't a video there, the police respond to that call and that dude's in trouble. Right? How many times?
Yeah, it becomes infinitely more difficult to deal with, because it's now we got to try and navigate it. And depending on who the individuals are who lean into it, you might have a radically different experience.
Exactly.
One might just take it super seriously and one might just dismiss the whole thing.
Exactly. Right. And I think, things with police violence, if there wasn't a video, how do white folks know that police violence against Black people happens? I think that, as someone growing up, I knew lots of people who experienced violence at the hands of the police, in my life. And it was just a normal thing that everyone knew happened pretty often. And with social media, now these videos have gone viral, and now the world has woken up a little bit to see, like, oh yeah, that person clearly was not reaching for a weapon. They were unarmed. Why were they shot?
Yeah.
And the videos force people to come to terms with the fact that racism is real and exists. So I think that's the first answer to the question, is that the internet or technology can unmask racism.
We've democratized a lot of this stuff that before just you didn't even have access to.
Right. Exactly. Now, on the other side of that, I think that the technology changes how we resist racism. And part of racism being more visible in online spaces, it means it's easier to highlight and to target and to attack. It's easier to talk about. It's easier to prove with the link. And so one of the things I talk about in the book.
Yeah. So when somebody goes, that's not true, that doesn't happen, it's like, well, here you go.
Here's a link. Exactly. Right. So I'm thinking about the research on racial microaggressions, right? There's been hundreds of papers on experiences with racial slights. The research says that the most common way to respond to racial microaggressions is just to not respond. So most of the time when folks of color experience subtle racial slights, things that question our appearance, our behavior, our criminality, or labeling us criminals in public spaces and when we shouldn't be, that these things are normal and happen every day. And most of the time people just don't respond to them. So that means when we don't respond, it's like we're accepting this as being natural, as being normal. And the people who commit microaggressions, whether intentionally or unintentionally, are just going to do it again because they've never been challenged. No one has ever told them that behavior is
Nobody's ever
problematic.
said, hey, did you even see what just happened right there?
Exactly, right? And, when I talk with students about this, and this is something that was unexpected, I didn't go into the study trying to understand how people responded to racism, but what I found is that students felt more comfortable and were more likely to either see or personally get involved in challenging racism online and through social media than they were in person. That online, when someone makes a racist joke, instead of it just being uncomfortable, and you look around and then tell some, friends of color later on, like, man, you won't believe what so and so said, that someone always says something to that joke that I had, right? Black man I talked to gave me an example of a racist joke where a white woman posted online saying, hey, I'm walking behind this black guy on campus. How ironic would it be if I robbed him for his iPhone? And then, right, someone posted on the comment, well, why would that be ironic? Are you saying you expect a black person to rob you? So this tiny little racist joke that
Okay.
would
Which
typically
would have just
go
gone completely off the radar, or to your point, maybe people might have been like, "Ugh, not appropriate," but not done anything about it. Now, because
exactly,
it's out there, there's the opportunity to actually lean in and go, let me challenge what you just said right there.
exactly, right. And they challenged this comment, and the student told me, he said, there's never been an incident where someone has made a comment like that online where someone doesn't say something to it. Right? Usually, when
Really?
we think about
Okay.
microaggression, one of the right the reasons why we don't respond, it happens too quickly. We aren't sure of what to say. We aren't sure whether it's racism. Right? We don't want to lose a friend by offending someone or making them think that we're too sensitive or too militant. But online, you're right that there's less pressure on any one person to respond. That when these comments are happening in public settings, that people who have the time and energy that day to respond can, and everyone doesn't have to, but everyone benefits from witnessing that
Right,
response,
because even
right?
if one person respond, I think that goes back to how the digital space is changing things. Is now that exposure is so much greater. So, and I see this just in human behavior in general. That in general, people don't like to respond to things. Especially if it's uncomfortable. I mean, people don't like
Hmm.
to respond to things even if it's positive. If it's negative, it just goes way up. But now you're increasing the number of people who have opportunity to. So even though a vast majority still won't, sometimes it's that one person who does that then starts the trend, or at least now exposes everybody else to, hey, there is a different point of view on this than the one that was originally represented.
Exactly, exactly. And right, so in this example of this white woman making this joke, based on what happened online, a black activist reached out to that person and began meeting with them to help them understand what was problematic about what they said. And right, seeing that as kind of being a personal level outreach of helping her racial kind of consciousness. And then I had other students tell me that they saw this woman being, was brought to a black party later in the semester, and they saw that as being evidence of, like, she has really made an effort at changing the way that she does things, and kind of growing as a person, and then understanding how you can cause harm by something that you didn't mean to hurt anybody with. And so I think it's just a powerful change in norm, from the norm being silence to the norm being, we're going to say something when you say or do something racially problematic, in a way that is going to stop the reproduction of this idea, that is going to make sure that if you do it again, that what you're doing this next time is harmful, that right,
Yeah.
and you're making a
The first
decision.
time might be an accident. The second time, hey, this has been called out to you before. It's been addressed and you're still doing it. This is no longer just a whoops. This is